The door was beginning to open into Egypt's past. The Rosetta Stone was finally proving to be the key to unlocking the hieroglyphs. But what did they say? What secrets and mysteries would be revealed? The announcement of Jean-Francois Champollion's discovery brought him much acclaim in France. The French Academy had previously considered him a crazy obsessive, working away in his room and getting nowhere. But now, suddenly, he was a national hero. The French government asked Champollion to arrange the purchase of British Egyptologist Henry Salt's extensive collection. After its incorporation into the Louvre Museum in 1827, Champollion was appointed the museum's first curator of Egyptian antiquities. However, Champollion had more in his mind than building a museum's inventory. He wanted to travel to Egypt. In 1828, with help from the Museum of Turin in Italy, Champollion organized an expedition to travel up the Nile River. This was the largest scientific effort to Egypt since Napoleon.
It was his first exposure, and an absolute stunning exposure, to the monuments of Egypt. And of course, he ran around them like a wild thing, identifying cartouches. This was one thing that was obsessing them at the time, trying to establish the dates of monuments and the order of kings, because they had no true framework for Egyptian history that they could base on the evidence from the monuments.
Champollyon's trip proved beyond a doubt his methods were accurate. He was able to read the ancient Egyptians' language off the temple walls themselves. His efforts in translating the hieroglyphs are credited with single-handedly creating the science of Egyptology. Egypt was no longer the land of silence. It was now speaking to us from the past. The names of pharaohs such as Ramesses and Thutmose were legendary, but now their faces could be identified. We now knew when they ruled and in which temples they prayed. Upon returning to Paris, Champollion continued his work. He now had enough material to write the definitive history of Egypt. Unfortunately, he would never get the chance. On March 4th, 1832, Jean-Francois Champollion died.
Champollion never had any doubts about his own ability and about his own achievement. And although he died at the age of 42, towards the end of his life, it was realized what he had done. And the French, quite rightly, created a professorship of Egyptology for him, the first anywhere in the world. So he died knowing that his achievement had been recognized. A lot of Champollion's work was left after his death, and the elder brother collected it, published it as a memorial to the genius in the family.
Where Champollion had focused on the pharaonic history of Egypt, others began to use his tools to study the demonic and hieroglyphic languages. The amount of written material on walls and on papyrus scrolls was tremendous. As the years went by, the social, political, economic history of the ancient Egyptians began to be understood. But it was the personal written records that surprised most people. We learned that by looking at the ancient Egyptians, we were looking at ourselves.
Slowly, it became clear that the Egyptians were like the rest of us. They wrote letters to the bank manager. They wrote letters to the local tax official. They wrote letters to each other about various normal aspects of normal lives. They had literature, just like ours, not very different.
The Rosetta Stone brought back to life the history of both ancient Egypt and of mankind itself. Although the Rosetta Stone has been deciphered now for more than 170 years, we're still only scratching the surface of what mysteries are buried. From the spectacular treasures found in the tomb of King Tutankhamun in 1922, to the uncovering of the tomb of the sons of Ramesses the Great in 1995, ancient Egypt is still providing new and amazing discoveries.
The Rosetta Stone is a milestone between a period when all we knew about our own origins was in the Bible or in the writings of the Greeks and the Romans. After the Rosetta Stone, we start to look at ancient history speaking for itself. It starts to say, where have we come from? Where have the ideas come from? What are our roots? And the Rosetta Stone is a way of bringing us face to face with our own identity.
And now, through the extraordinary efforts of men like Napoleon Bonaparte, Thomas Young, and Jean-Francois Champollion, the riddle of the Rosetta Stone has been solved. The language and mysteries of the ancient Egyptians can now be understood.